This coming week, Carrie and I are traveling to honor the senior rabbi at the first congregation I served in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And it brought me to think about when I was working there, right outside of my office, there was a huge frame of all of the original women who started the Sisterhood well over a century before when the congregation began. And it's much like, it was a framed version of what we have in our history annals. Many of you have this book at home. And I would walk outside my office every day, and all these women would be staring at me. But I would read, as you can in this book, which I looked, was printed in 1954. Here's their names. Mrs. Arthur B. Rose, Mrs. David Alexander, Mrs. Leo Meyer, Mrs. Raymond Haas, and so on and so forth. Page after page in our history book here, all of these women are, of course, introduced, as was the tradition at the time, by their husbands' names. I'm thinking about this in today's context, and I'm thinking about my own children. And what would they think if they were to see this page in this book? Much like what would they think if they saw a phone that had a cord attached to it? I can imagine, and I haven't done this test yet, but I will. I can imagine that my kids would open up this page, and they can read now, and they would see all these pictures of women, and they would read their names, and without intending it to be funny at all, and meaning absolutely no harm, I can imagine them saying, "Dad, that is a lot of transgender women." All a part of sisterhood. Another part of our history is a book that Rabbi Applebaum wrote. What Everyone Should Know About Judaism, published 4 times, reprinted 4 times. First in 1959, the last at the end of the 60s, I believe. Or maybe, wait, I'm going to check. It might be the 70s. 1978. So from the early 60s through almost the end of the 70s, this book was published. Here's how he describes what everyone should know about bar mitzvah and, as he wrote, bas mitzvah. Bar mitzvah marked a lad's attainment of religious majority. Therewith, great word, therewith, we don't use it anymore. Therewith, he assumed the obligation and responsibility for religious duties. As a religious major, he numbers in a religious quorum, a minyan. Today, the rite of bar mitzvah is primarily a means to mark the completion of one stage of religious education, to strengthen Jewish allegiance, to encourage mature religious attitudes in the teenager. Turn the page 2 times. What is a bas mitzvah? The entry I just read to you was about half of what he wrote about bar mitzvah. Here's the entire entry on bas mitzvah. It is a recent innovation, fashioned after bar mitzvah for girls on the attainment of their 13th birthday. It is not as widely accepted by Jewish congregations as bar mitzvah, period. Tonight, Tammy Gersman will be reading Torah for us, and it will not surprise you that we will have a woman reading Torah. In fact, given that Cantor Kathy is what would traditionally be called our Ba'alat Kriyah, our master Torah reader, our cantor, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that in our congregation, women read Torah far more than men. Tonight, the Jewish world is also celebrating the 100th anniversary of the first Bat Mitzvah on this Shabbat. 100 years ago, on this Shabbat, a young woman by the name of Judith Kaplan, became the very first young woman to publicly celebrate a bat mitzvah. Rabbi Carol Ballin, along with the Jewish Women's Archive, have done a wonderful job creating loads of material that I encourage you to read and watch. Wonderful videos of not only historical videos of what that bat mitzvah was like, but also women recording their experience of having a bat mitzvah throughout the decades. The website is jwa.org, like TWA, but a J. jwa.org, you'll find all the information there. 2 points struck me as I read the history and listened to the stories on this website. The first is that it seems that doors are open to us often by someone who knows us. In other words, it was no accident that Judith Kaplan had a bat mitzvah 100 years ago when no one had ever had a bat mitzvah. Her father was Rabbi Mordecai Kaplan. He was one of the most influential rabbis of the 20th century. He was a professor at the Conservative Movement's Jewish Theological Seminary, and later he became the founder of Reconstructionism. He was as credible an authority on Judaism as anyone in his time. But perhaps more importantly, he was the father of 4 girls, Judith being his eldest. This is our congregation's story as well. We wouldn't have opened our doors to the queer community if we did not know of LGBTQ kids in our own congregation. And we probably wouldn't have done so as quickly or as openly had one of those kids not been Wendy Horowitz, the child of our rabbi and Toby Horowitz. Doors seem to open faster and maybe better when the person that we're opening the door for is someone whom we love. So that was true for Judith Kaplan 100 years ago. It's been true in our congregation. I imagine it's true in each of our own personal lives as we face challenges and see the challenges that our loved ones are facing. We are motivated to help them get through those doors without stumbling. But what happens when you're not personally moved by the changes in the world? What if, by chance, you did not have daughters at a time when they could not have a bat mitzvah, or your loved ones are not gay at a time when our community was not ready to celebrate queer members of our congregation? What are we to do when we're not motivated by the personal? Rabbi Stacy Rigler, a colleague, answers this question in a wonderful article. She says that we have to look at our community the way some people look at new technology. She asks us to embrace what is referred to in the technological world as a disruptive innovation. In the technological world, it's defined as follows. A disruptive innovation is the creation of a new market formed from a new type of product or service. A product that does not meet the needs of the current market. Those needs then grow and adapt, and if they succeed in attracting the old market as well as a new market, the innovation disrupts the market as a whole. The example is a smartphone. Smartphones came along, nobody needed a smartphone, and now there's a whole world built around smartphones. But what do we do when we turn to human beings? Rabbi Rigler says it's when we turn to human beings that we start to ask, can we change the who, the what, and the when, but hold on to the why? And so there is a trend now in B'nai Mitzvah, bar and bat mitzvahs. The trend is, in our world where our kids have a sense of gender fluidity, where being masculine or feminine is something that they're willing to easily question, just like my children would look at a picture of women with men's names and say, well, it's a group of people who've changed their gender. There are also those kids who've come forward and said, I don't want my bar mitzvah to be a bar mitzvah, or my bat mitzvah to be a bat mitzvah. Can we call it a b'nai mitzvah? Or some have said, can we call it a ba mitzvah? Just take out everything after the B. If you translate b'nai mitzvah, it's plural, girls and boys. Ba mitzvah means, instead of son of the commandments or daughter of the commandments, it means I'm with the commandments. Judaism is a religion, as most of you know from experience. We love separating things by gender. We sit traditionally men on one side, women on the other. Our youth groups often separated, AZA and BBG, boys to one side, girls to the other, just like summer camp. Same with our life cycle rituals, bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. So the question that Rabbi Rigler asks is, can we accept what our kids are saying to us now, as uncomfortable as it might be for us to change things that we've always held on to? Can we accept and look to the future with this disruptive innovation and say, a B'nai Mitzvah, perhaps if we can get the why right, then the who, the what, and the when, maybe that part can change. And as we've seen, as women have been having bat mitzvahs now for 100 years, we've seen how it has changed, like the smartphone, and become a central part of our world, where in a congregation like ours, our kids probably think women read Torah first before men ever got to it. And of course, this is nothing new. So I'm going to turn the page, one page back, to what Mrs. Edward J. Rabb wrote in 1954 as she described Temple Israel's sisterhood. Here are her very words. They're all about the why and not at all about the who or the what or the when. She writes, Temple Israel Sisterhood. The Constitution and bylaws of the Temple Israel Sisterhood read, the purpose of this organization shall be, A, to serve Judaism and humanity, B, to promote closer relationship among its members. And then she adds, during this year of rededication, we turn our thoughts and efforts toward a better understanding of our purpose and our ideals. As we enter into the second century of women having a bat mitzvah, and we turn to our kids and the ways in which they challenge us, I hope that we too can focus on the why and perhaps allow some of those other pieces to be flexible for us, to see where they, like Judith Kaplan, will take us for the many, many kids who will help to lead us into the next century of the ways in which our tradition will change. Amen.